The girl the wind wouldn't keep. The wind had teeth that night. It came shrieking off the desert, clawing at the sky, tossing sand like glass shards. The door of the Mayfield cabin slammed open, then shut again, then open once more, bang, bang, like the devil's own heartbeat. Inside, a lantern swung from a rafter, spilling wild light over faces tight with fear. "Hold her still," a man hissed. Clara's wrists were bound in rawhide. Her cheek was streaked with blood where someone had struck her. The room stank of whiskey and dust and hate. Her brother Amos stood by the fire, eyes hard, voice harder. "You brought death into this house, girl. Death follows you." Clara didn't answer. Her breath came ragged, the wind howling louder than her thoughts. She tried to look at her mother, but the old woman turned away, clutching a rosary that wasn't blessed by any priest. "She buried 3 babes," Amos said, "and then her husband broke his neck in broad daylight. You tell me that's not a curse." Her mother whispered, "We warned her. The Lord don't bless barren land." Clara's jaw trembled. "He fell 'cause the saddle strap snapped, Amos. You know that." But no one was listening. The words fell like stones in a dry well. Amos picked up a coin pouch from the table and tossed it to a gray-bearded man leaning in the corner. 50 silver, like we said. She's yours to take. Do with her what you will." The prospector spat tobacco into the fire, the flame flaring green. "Reckon I'll put her to work on my claim near Rattlesnake Bluff. Ain't much use for talk out there." Clara jerked against the rawhide. "You can't sell me like a mule." But the door opened again, wind flooding in, and her words were ripped away, flung out into the black. The prospector grabbed her arm, dragging her into the storm. Barefoot, half-dressed, she stumbled into the night. The desert didn't welcome her. It hissed around her ankles, whispering cruel names. Her breath came sharp, her heart hammering like hooves. She ran until the lights of Dry Creek vanished behind her, and the stars opened above like cold eyes. The prospector's wagon rolled 100 paces ahead, his lantern bobbing. When he stopped to water the mule, she slipped into the shadows of a rock ridge. Her pulse pounded in her ears. She waited, trembling, until he spat and climbed back into the wagon. Then she turned and ran. No plan, no water, no mercy, only the rhythm of her bare feet and the endless wind. The sand cut her skin. Her lungs burned. Somewhere behind her, coyotes began to sing. She tripped over a mesquite root, hit the ground hard, and lay there coughing grit. For a long moment, she didn't move. Only the sound of the wind and her ragged breathing filled the world. "Lord," she whispered, "if you still know my name." A tear cut a line down her cheek, carving through the dust. But no voice answered, no miracle came. Only the cry of the desert, old, cruel, endless. By dawn, the horizon was a blade of light cutting through bruised clouds. Her dress was torn, her feet bleeding. She staggered over a rise and saw it. A lone ranch gate standing crooked against the pale sky. A wooden sign swung on rusted chains, J. Callahan, no trespass. A horse snorted somewhere beyond the fence. Smoke drifted from a chimney. The sight hit her like a memory she didn't own. She pushed forward, each step slower, heavier. "Just one soul," she murmured, "one soul who'll see me." Her knees buckled. She hit the dirt, face first, the taste of iron on her tongue. The world tilted, blurred. She thought she saw movement, a man's shape against the sun, tall, still, hat-brim low. Then darkness took her. When she woke, it was night again. A fire crackled nearby, painting the cabin walls in gold and shadow. She lay on a rough cot, a blanket over her shoulders. Her feet were clean and bandaged. For a long time, she didn't move. The smell of coffee drifted from somewhere close. A low voice murmured, "Steady, careful. You best stay down. The fever ain't gone." Clara turned her head. A man sat near the fire, mending a saddle strap with slow, deliberate hands. His face was lined, his hair silver at the temples. His eyes, when they lifted to meet hers, were like the desert sky before a storm. "You're Jacob Callahan?" she asked, voice hoarse. He nodded once. "You were lying half dead by my gate. I'll work for what I owe." He gave a quiet grunt. You don't owe me. Not yet. Silence stretched. The fire popped. Outside, the wind had gentled, whispering through the cracks. Finally, he said, I ain't much for company. I ain't much for leaving, she said. Something flickered in his expression, just a breath of surprise before the mask returned. He poured her a tin cup of water and handed it over. You got family looking for you? No, sir. He looked at the fire, not her. Good. She frowned, not sure if it was kindness or warning. After a moment, he spoke again, almost to himself. Wind's cruel out here. Takes what it wants. Some folks say it carries ghosts. Maybe it just carries the ones no one else would keep, she murmured. His gaze lifted again, sharper this time. That's so. She didn't flinch. That's what I reckon. He studied her face for a long, unreadable moment. Then he nodded once and went back to stitching the saddle. Get some rest, miss. Clara, she said softly. He didn't ask for a last name. Outside, the desert stretched endless under a moon sharp as a scythe. The wind wandered the dunes, humming old songs. Inside, the fire burned low, and the man who had lost everything worked in silence while the woman called Curse dreamed of nothing for the first time in years. The old storyteller's voice would say later, that was the night the wind found something it couldn't steal, a woman too stubborn to die, and a man too tired to keep living alone. And if you listened close, you'd swear the flames themselves were whispering her name. Clara Mayfield, the girl the wind wouldn't keep. The rancher who spoke to ghosts. The shovel struck rock with a sharp clang. Jacob Callahan paused, breath misting in the cold dawn. Across the yard, Clara carried a pail from the well, the handle creaking with each step. Her hands were raw, knuckles split. Dust clung to her hair like frost. Ground's stubborn this time of year, Jacob muttered, driving the shovel down again. Clara didn't answer. She emptied the pail into the trough, watching the water ripple silver in the light. A horse snorted softly behind her. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote barked twice, then silence. It was always too quiet on the Callahan ranch. Inside the house, two empty chairs faced each other at the table. The smaller one had been untouched for years. Jacob leaned on the shovel handle, eyes on the horizon. Fence lines down by the south ridge again. Something's been cutting wire. Coyotes don't carry wire cutters, Clara said. He looked at her. She looked back. That was enough. By midday, the wind had turned mean. It whistled through the grass like a warning. Jacob saddled his horse and rode out toward the ridge. Clara followed on foot, a rifle slung across her back. You stay here, he'd said earlier. But she hadn't listened then, and she wasn't about to now. She found him near the dry creek bed, crouched over a fence post. The barbed wire was snapped clean, the ground marked by boot prints, fresh ones. Ranch hand from Harlan spread, Jacob said without looking up. They've been testing my patience for weeks. Clara knelt, tracing a print with her finger. They'll come again. He straightened, jaw tight. Let him. When they returned that evening, dusk had painted the sky blood red. The house creaked in the wind. Jacob stabled the horse while Clara started the fire. She worked with calm, steady hands, but her mind wasn't still. He came in, dust clinging to his coat. You got a steady way about you, he said. Habit, she replied. Keeps my thoughts from eating me alive. He poured coffee into 2 tin cups. You talk like someone who's seen ghosts. She met his gaze across the firelight. Ain't seen him, she said softly. Just carry him. He didn't smile. Didn't have to. Later that night, wind rattled the windows. Clara couldn't sleep. She stepped outside, blanket around her shoulders. The moon lit the ranch in silver. The land felt both alive and empty, the way it does after too much grief. She saw him then, Jacob, standing by the fence, hat in hand, lips moving. His voice was too soft to hear, but his face was carved with sorrow. She took a step closer, gravel crunching beneath her boot. He turned. Couldn't rest, she said quietly. He nodded once. Neither could they. She didn't ask who they were. The wind carried the answer anyway. Whispers, faint and broken, like a lullaby sung by the lost. He turned back toward the dark fields. My wife and boy, he said finally, buried him up by the North Hill. Every night the wind cuts across there first. Guess it knows the way home. Clara's throat tightened. I'm sorry. Don't be. World takes what it wants. She looked at him, this man who carried his ghosts without complaint, and something inside her shifted. I know the Kantakin, she whispered. 2 days later, trouble came riding out of the heat. 3 men, faces half-shadowed by their hats, guns easy on their hips, rode through the gate without slowing. The lead rider dismounted and spat into the dust. Afternoon, Callahan, he said, voice slick as oil. Mr. Harlan says this land's too much for one man. Reckons you'd sell if the price was right. Jacob didn't move. Tell Harlan I don't sell to thieves. The rider grinned. Don't reckon he'll take that kindly. The man's gaze drifted to Clara, standing on the porch. Well now, ain't you the Mayfield girl? Heard you were dead. Clara's stomach turned cold. He smirked. Guess the curse didn't stick. Jacob's hand moved, slow but sure, to the revolver at his side. You done talking? The man held up both hands. Just bringing word, that's all. But I'd keep watch if I were you. Fences break easy in this country. They rode off laughing, the dust swallowing them whole. That night, the firelight flickered like a heartbeat. Jacob sat cleaning his gun, the metal gleaming. They won't stop, Clara said. No, he agreed. They won't. He glanced at her, then at the old rifle leaning against the door. You ever shoot one of those? She hesitated. Once. Once enough. She nodded. Once was plenty. He grunted. Then you know what it costs. She looked into the fire. Everything worth keeping costs something. A storm rolled over the hills before dawn. Rain fell hard the first in months. Jacob stood by the window, watching the lightning flash over the ridges. Wind's different tonight, Clara murmured from behind him. Yeah, he said. Smells like trouble. When he turned, she was holding his rifle, checking the chamber with the kind of care that comes from memory. You keep that steady, he said. I will. He almost smiled. Almost. Morning came quiet. The storm had passed, but the air was heavy with what it left behind. Jacob stepped onto the porch, boots sinking into the damp earth. The ranch stretched out before him. Broken fence lines, trampled grass, hoof marks. They came through in the night, Clara said, stepping beside him. He nodded. Then we start again. She looked at him, eyes fierce. No, Jacob, we finish it. The wind stirred, carrying the smell of wet dust and gun oil. He met her gaze, something unreadable flickering there. Fear, maybe, or faith. Finally, he said, I don't need children, Clara. She tilted her head, waiting. I need someone who don't run when the wind gets hard. For a moment, neither moved. Then she nodded once, slow and sure. I reckon you found her. The old storyteller's voice would later tell it this way. He spoke to ghosts, she spoke to storms, and between them, the wind finally listened. And though the rain stopped by noon, folks swore they could still hear 2 voices on the breeze, calling each other's names through the dust. Blood and dust at Rattlesnake Bluff. The barn was burning. Flames licked up the walls like hungry tongues, devouring wood and memory alike. The horses screamed inside, their cries drowning beneath the roar of fire. Clara burst through the smoke, coughing, eyes streaming. Her dress caught a spark, and she slapped it out with her palm, skin blistering. Jacob, she shouted, voice raw. From the shadows, a gunshot cracked, then another. Splinters ripped through the barn door. She ducked, heart pounding, and saw him. Jacob, slumped against the fence, blood darkening his shirt. Stay back, he rasped, raising his revolver. But there were too many of them. Shapes moved in the flickering light. Men on horseback, faces wrapped in bandanas. Harlan's men. Callahan, one of them yelled. Your luck's run out. Harlan's claiming this land. Clara dropped to her knees beside Jacob. His breath came short, wet. She pressed her hands against the wound, but the blood kept coming. Don't you quit, she whispered. Don't you dare. He grimaced. They took the horses. You run. I ain't running, she said. Clara. No. Her voice cracked like thunder. You said yourself, you don't need someone who runs. He looked at her then, really looked, and something fierce passed between them, something that felt like a vow. Another bullet hit the ground near her boot. Dirt exploded. She grabbed Jacob's rifle, slung it over her shoulder, and hauled him toward the corral. Smoke stung her eyes, the world narrowing to fire and breath, and the sound of men laughing in the distance. They reached the trough. She dropped him beside it. "You keep your head low," she said, loading the rifle. "Clara." She didn't wait. She turned and ran. The desert swallowed her as she rode out, Jacob's old horse lathered with sweat, mane whipping through the wind. Her dress clung to her, stiff with blood and soot. Behind her, the Callahan ranch burned against the horizon, a single red wound in the dark. The wind tore at her hair. The rifle bumped against her back. Ahead, the cliffs of Rattlesnake Bluff rose out of the land, jagged, cruel, familiar. She reined the horse hard at the ridge's edge, scanning the canyon below. Lanterns flickered. Men shouted, loading wagons. Harlan stood in the center of it all, coat white as bone, a cigar glowing between his teeth. "Well, I'll be," he drawled, seeing her silhouette against the sky. The cursed bride rides again. Clara slid off the horse, rifle steady in her hands. "You took enough from me, Harlan," she said. "You won't take what's left." He laughed, a dry, hollow sound. "You think you can stop me? You couldn't even keep a husband alive." Her finger brushed the trigger. He saw it, and his smile widened. "Go on then. Do it," which she didn't. Not yet. The wind had gone dead still, too still. The desert was holding its breath. One of Harlan's men stepped forward. "Boss." "Kill her," Harlan said. The first shot missed her by inches. She dropped to one knee, rolled, and fired back. The man fell, screaming, before his gun hit the dirt. The others froze. She cocked the rifle again, movements clean, calm, precise. Another man charged. She shot him through the chest. Then there was only the sound of wind again, and her breathing. "You always were good with your hands," Harlan sneered. "Guess the curse made you mean." Clara walked toward him, slow, deliberate. "A curse didn't make me, Harlan. Men like you did." He raised his revolver. Her shot was faster. The bullet hit his shoulder, spinning him sideways. He cursed, firing blind. The round grazed her arm, searing pain ripping through her. She stumbled, dropped to one knee. He came closer, bleeding but smiling, gun shaking in his hand. "You'll die same as the rest," he said. "Alone." Clara reached inside her dress pocket, fingers brushing metal. Jacob's Colt, the one he'd carved his initials into. She drew it, one smooth motion, and fired. The bullet struck true, center chest. Harlan staggered, disbelief written across his face. He looked down at the spreading red, then up at her. "You ain't cursed," he rasped. "You're poison." She holstered the Colt. "Then may the land remember me." He fell backward, dust rising around him like smoke. The wind returned, carrying the smell of gunpowder and rain. Clara stood among the bodies, breath shaking, heart steady. She walked to Harlan's wagon, kicked open the chest, and saw what he'd fought for: maps, deeds, contracts. Land he'd stolen from widows, orphans, soldiers. She tore them to pieces, feeding them to the fire of a nearby lantern. Behind her, thunder rolled over the plains. By the time she returned to the ranch, the fire had died to embers. The barn was gone, the fences blackened, but Jacob still breathed. Barely. She knelt beside him. "It's done," she said. "He won't come again." His eyes fluttered open. "You did it." She smiled faintly. "We did." He tried to speak, but coughed instead. Blood on his lips. "You rest," she whispered. "I'll keep watch." His hand found hers, rough and warm. "Wind's changin'," he murmured. "Let it," she said. And the wind did. It softened, curling around them like an old friend. The ashes lifted and danced away into the dawn. Later, when folks told the story, they said the sky turned red that morning because the desert had seen justice and wept. They said a woman rode into the canyon alone and came back with the storm behind her. But the old storyteller just smiled and said, "Justice don't come easy out here. It comes on tired feet and with a heart full of ghosts." That night at Rattlesnake Bluff, the wind itself stopped to watch. A cursed woman stand taller than the men who damned her. And if you ever stand out by that canyon at dusk, when the wind shifts and the dust turns gold, you might still hear her voice, steady, unbroken, whispering to the land she saved. "No one cursed me. They just couldn't stand a woman strong enough to fight back. Ashes and dawn. The wind carried the scent of gunpowder and burnt wood. Ash fluttered like black snow over the hollow that used to be Ethan Cole's ranch. Smoke curled from the ruins, whispering through the wrecked corral, where the bodies of 2 horses still steamed in the cold dawn. May knelt in the dirt, her face streaked with soot, her palms pressed into the earth as if steadying the world itself. Around her lay the fallen, the men who'd come in the night to finish what her past had started. Her dress was torn, her hair loose, and the Colt in her hand trembled as if alive. May, Ethan's voice broke through the crackle of dying flames. He staggered from behind the smoking barn, blood soaking his sleeve, eyes heavy with disbelief and awe. You drew faster than any man I've seen. She turned to him slowly, chest heaving. The moonlight caught the iron edge of her jaw. I had to, she whispered. They would have burned it all. Her gun hung loose in her hand, barrel still warm. A soft breeze moved her hair. For a long moment, the only sound was the brittle hiss of embers. Then Ethan's boots crunched closer. Who are you, May? Really? She didn't answer at first. Instead, she lifted the Colt and checked the cylinder, 6 spent shells. Her voice came low, haunted. I was called Curse May back in Kansas. Said every man who married me ended up dead. Maybe they were right. Ethan's jaw tightened. That's why your kin sold you. They said I brought bad luck. Said I couldn't bear children, couldn't bring life, only death. She looked up, eyes wet but fierce. But tonight, I reckon I proved I can protect life better than most men ever could. Ethan took a slow breath, glancing toward the dead men sprawled in the dust. One wore a badge, Marshall King's. Another bore the mark of the Kavanaugh brothers, the same men who'd burned half the valley, chasing bounty and blood. You didn't just protect me, he said softly. You saved this land. Saved every rancher in 5 miles from their kind. May holstered the Colt, hands shaking. Then it's over. No, Ethan murmured. It's just beginning. He pointed toward the ridge. Shadows moved there. More riders. The last of King's men, carrying torches. The red light gleamed off their rifles as they descended toward the blackened ranch. May's breath came fast. How many? 6, maybe 7. She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. Then we don't wait for them to come knocking. She strode toward the corral's gate, picking up a fallen rifle from one of the dead men. Ethan tried to follow, but his wound made him stumble. May, he called after her. You don't owe this land a thing. She paused, eyes hard beneath the rising glow of firelight. Maybe not, but I owe it peace. The next few minutes unfolded like a storm breaking open the horizon. May rode out on the black mare that had survived the fire, her dress whipping behind her, hair wild as the wind. The rifle lay across her lap. She didn't wait for the men to reach the ranch. She met them halfway, under the burning sky. Ethan watched from the ridge, helpless and spellbound, as muzzle flashes cracked in the dark. Her shots came sharp, precise, one after another. The torches fell. Horses screamed. Dust and smoke turned the night into a fever dream of red and gold. When it was over, silence settled heavy as judgment. He found her kneeling again, this time beside the stream that cut through the valley. She was rinsing the blood from her hands, her face ghostly pale in the dawn. They're gone, Ethan said. All of them. May didn't look up. There be talk. There's always talk. A woman killing men, they'll call it witchcraft. He limped closer. Let them talk. Folks have been talking about me, too. Said I was too broken to run this ranch after losing my wife. Said I'd gone soft. She glanced at him, eyes shadowed but alive. And were they right? He smiled faintly. Not after tonight. The sun began to rise, slow, red, and solemn, spilling light over the valley scars. Ethan reached out, his hand finding hers. Her fingers were cold but steady. I don't need children, May, he said quietly. I need you. Her breath caught, the words sinking deep into the silence between them. No man had ever said that to her. Not without pity, not without some hidden deal behind it. Just truth. For the first time in years, May let herself breathe. She leaned into him, eyes closing as the warmth of the sunrise brushed her face. Then maybe the curse finally broke, she whispered. Behind them, the ranch lay in ashes, but the air smelled of rain now, clean and new. And somewhere in the distance, an old storyteller's voice carried through the wind. They said she was cursed, a woman sold for the price of her barren womb. But out where the desert meets the dawn, a widowed rancher saw the truth. Some women weren't born to cradle life. They were born to defend it. The wind shifted, carrying the last of the smoke away. And so they say, if you ride past the old coal ranch on a quiet morning, you might still see her shadow, rifle in hand, coat flaring in the wind, watching over the valley she saved and the man who never asked her to change. The storyteller paused, the crackle of the fire filling the gap. They called her cursed, but the land called her blessed. And the legend of May Cole, the cursed widow, rode on, etched in the dust and sunrise of the American frontier.